Listen to me. There comes a moment in your life when excuses can no longer live in the same space as your goals. You've been carrying them for years. You've been feeding them, protecting them, defending them. Every time something gets hard, you hold your excuse like a shield. But today, that shield becomes your prison. You've been telling yourself stories. I'm tired. I don't have the resources. I don't know where to start. My family wasn't supportive. Or my past was rough. And I'm telling you, none of that can stop you except you. People with less money, less education, less support are still winning because they killed their excuses and went to war with their goals. You can't expect greatness while holding on to excuses. Greatness has requirements. Greatness demands sacrifice. Greatness demands consistency when you don't feel like it. Greatness demands that you show up when everything inside you says, quit. Some of you are losing not because you don't have potential. You're losing because you're negotiating with your excuses. You're giving them room. You're letting them drive the car of your life. Hear me clearly, your excuses are lying to you. They're comfortable, they're familiar, they're easy, but they're killing your dreams. The moment you kill your excuses is the moment your real life begins. When you stop saying, I can't, you start discovering how you can. When you stop blaming everybody else, you start empowering yourself. When you stop hiding behind reasons, you start building results. You don't need perfect conditions. You need a perfect decision. A decision that says, from this moment on, I will outwork my doubts. I will outperform my fears. I will silence every lie in my head that keeps me average. You don't rise to the level of your motivation. You rise to the level of your standards. So raise them. Hold yourself accountable. Wake up every day and grind like your life depends on it. Because it does. Stop waiting for somebody to save you. Stop waiting for tomorrow. Stop giving power to excuses that don't deserve to live another second. Today is the funeral. Today your excuses die. Today the strongest version of you is born. Now get up and go get what's yours. Excuses feel true, but they are emotional, not factual. And that's where most people get trapped for their entire lives. The mind has this powerful ability to take a feeling, dress it up, put a suit on it, and convince you it's a fact. It will take a moment of fear, insecurity, or doubt and present it like a logical reason why you can't move, why you shouldn't start, why it's not the right time. It convinces you that what you feel is what is real. But when you step back, when you actually break it down, you realize that the excuse wasn't built from logic, it was built from emotion. Emotion mixed with fear, mixed with past pain, mixed with the unknown. And the trap is that you believe it because you feel it so deeply. But feelings can lie. Feelings can shift. Feelings can betray you. Facts don't care how you feel, but excuses are born from the feelings you refuse to challenge. The problem is that nobody teaches you that emotional stories can disguise themselves as rational decisions. You start thinking, I'm not ready, but what you really feel is fear. You think, I don't have the resources, but what you really feel is insecurity about failing. You say, I'll start tomorrow, but what you really feel is discomfort, and your brain wants to avoid it. Excuses thrive in emotional darkness, in the spaces where you don't question them. They grow in silence. They expand in your mind because you never hold them up to the light. And when you don't test them, when you don't challenge them, they become your truth. Not because they're real, but because you never tried to prove them wrong. Look at your own life. Think about all the things you delayed, avoided, or walked away from. Was it because you genuinely could not do them? Or was it because the weight of your emotions felt too heavy in that moment? Be honest. Most of the time, it wasn't the situation that was impossible. It was the emotional story that made it look impossible. Humans are built to avoid pain, discomfort, embarrassment, and the unknown. And excuses are the mental tools we use to justify that avoidance. Your mind wants protection, not progress. It wants comfort, not challenge. So it manufactures reasons that feel protective, but in reality, they only protect your limitations. Think about it. If excuses were factual, no one in your situation would ever succeed. But people with less than you, people who came from harder backgrounds, people who were doubted, rejected, ignored, they still found a way. So your excuses can't be facts. Others have faced the same or worse circumstances and overcame them. That alone proves that excuses are emotional blocks, not real barriers. It's not that the world is stopping you. It's that your interpretations of the world are stopping you. Two people can have the same challenge. One sees a wall, the other sees a ladder. The difference isn't the challenge. The difference is the emotional reaction to it. Excuses feel true because they come from inside you. You trust your own voice more than anything else. But what if that voice has been shaped by fear? What if it's been shaped by past failures, by criticism you heard growing up, by people who doubted you? What if your inner voice is repeating lies that someone else planted in? If the voice inside you was built from the wounds outside you, then it cannot be trusted to guide your future. That voice is emotional residue, not reality. And until you challenge it, it will continue to run your life. Some people don't realize how deeply emotional excuses are. They are built from your desire to stay safe, to avoid risk, to avoid looking foolish or failing publicly. They come from the fear of not being good enough, the fear of disappointing people, the fear of trying and discovering that success doesn't come easily. Your excuses are tied to the survival part of your brain, the part that wants predictability. Anything that threatens stability, new goals, new habits, new risks, your brain fights against it and it disguises that resistance as logic. It sounds like wisdom, but it's really fear. It feels like caution, but it's really hesitation. Excuses are fear wearing a mask. Ask yourself this: if an excuse was truly factual, it would hold up under pressure. It would stand firm when tested. But excuses fall apart the moment you push against them. You say, I don't have time, yet somehow you find time for things that give you comfort. You say, I don't know where to start, but you solve harder problems in your life without instruction. You say, I'm not ready, but readiness comes through action, not waiting. When you break it down, it becomes obvious that excuses aren't rooted in reality. They're rooted in the emotions you haven't learned to master yet. It's not that the excuse is powerful. It's that your emotions are. They influence your decisions more than you realize. Every time you avoid doing something difficult, your mind rewards you with relief. Relief feels good, so your brain learns that excuses are useful. It becomes a habit, a cycle. You feel fear, right arrow, you make an excuse, right arrow. You avoid action, right arrow, you feel temporary relief. Right arrow, the excuse becomes stronger. Now your emotional brain thinks it's protecting you, but it's actually robbing your growth. You have to understand this clearly. Excuses don't feel emotional in the moment because the brain disguises them as rational thoughts. But they are rooted in emotion 100% of the time. Fear, doubt, overwhelmed shame, insecurity, fatigue, uncertainty. They're emotional reactions pretending to be logical conclusions. That's why they feel so convincing. Logic doesn't control you. Your emotional patterns do. And until you break those patterns, your excuses will run your life like invisible chains. Think about how many dreams died in people because of emotions disguised as excuses. How many people said it's not the right time and 20 years passed? How many people said I'm not good enough and never discovered how good they could have been? How many people said I'll start next month and then their whole life became a cycle of delays? Excuses sound small, but they can destroy entire destiny. Not because the excuse was strong, but because the emotion behind it was never confronted. To kill excuses, you don't fight the excuse itself. You fight the emotion underneath it. You deal with the fear, the doubt, the overwhelm, the insecurity. When the emotion weakens, the excuse collapses. Every major breakthrough in life begins with emotional mastery. When you learn to feel fear and move anyway, excuses die. When you learn to feel discomfort and still take action, excuses die. When you learn to feel uncertainty but trust yourself, excuses die. Your freedom is not in logic. It's an emotional discipline. Imagine how powerful you would be if your actions weren't controlled by feelings. Imagine waking up tired but still showing up. Imagine feeling fear but still stepping forward. Imagine doubting yourself but still deciding to try. That is the version of you that wins. Not the version with perfect conditions, not the version with no fear, but the version that doesn't let emotions dictate behavior. Excuses feel true because they're rooted in familiarity. The human mind is addicted to what is known, even if the known is destructive. If your whole life you've been telling yourself stories of limitation, your brain becomes comfortable with that identity. And any attempt to break that identity triggers emotional resistance. This is why people sabotage their own progress. They're emotionally attached to their excuses. Their excuses become part of who they believe they are. And breaking them feels like breaking themselves. That's why transformation is so hard. You're not just fighting habits, you're fighting emotional identities. But here's the good news. Once you separate the emotion from the thought, the excuse loses its power instantly. You say, I'm not ready. And instead of accepting it, you ask yourself, is this fear or fact? You say, I can't do it. And you ask, is this real or emotional avoidance? The moment you question it, the illusion breaks and the real truth comes out. You were capable the entire time you were just emotionally trapped. Your potential has never been the issue. Your excuses have been. And your excuses were never based on reality. They were based on momentary feelings that you allowed to become permanent beliefs. Once you understand that excuses are emotional reactions, not facts, you unlock a new level of freedom. You realize that you don't have to feel confident to take action. You don't have to feel ready to begin. You don't have to feel fearless to move forward. You simply have to stop treating emotions like truth. The irony is that once you take action despite the emotion, your emotions start to align with your actions. Confidence grows, clarity grows, strength grows, strength grows. The very emotions that once held you back begin to support you. But that only happens when you take the first step without waiting for emotional permission. You can't wait for feelings to guide you. Feelings are followers. They follow action. They follow discipline. They follow consistency, but they never lead. Excuses feel true, but they are emotional, not factual. And once you understand this, you can finally stop obeying the lies your feelings tell you. You can stop letting temporary emotions create permanent limitation. You can stop living in the shadow of fear and start living in the reality of possibility. Your entire life can change when you realize that nothing was truly holding you back, except the stories you told yourself and the emotions you never challenged. Kill the emotion and the excuse dies. Fight the feeling and the limitation breaks. Challenge the inner voice and your true voice emerges. You don't need more resources, more talent, or more time. You need emotional honesty. You need awareness of the lies your fear tells you. You need the courage to separate what you feel from what is true. When you master that, excuses stop feeling like truth. They become what they always were: shadows, illusions, emotional reactions. And once you see them clearly, you are no longer controlled by them. That's when your real life begins. That's when you become unstoppable. That's when excuses die, and the strongest, most disciplined, most capable version of you finally steps forward. Excuses grow when you do nothing, and action destroys them instantly, but most people don't realize how deep this truth goes. Excuses are like weeds in a garden. They don't need your permission to grow. They don't need your attention. They don't need your approval. All they need is your silence. All they need is your hesitation. All they need is a little bit of time where you choose not to act, and they start taking over your mind, your confidence, your belief in yourself, and eventually your entire life. The dangerous thing about excuses is that they are alive. They are not passive thoughts. They are active forces. The moment you delay, the moment you procrastinate, the moment you choose comfort over responsibility, excuses start expanding. They don't remain the same size. They get louder, heavier, more convincing. They begin as whispers, small doubts, tiny reasons. But as soon as you decide, I'll do it later, those whispers become echoes. Those echoes become voices, and those voices become command. Before you know it, the excuse isn't just a thought anymore. It becomes your reality. And that reality begins shaping your entire identity. What people fail to understand is that excuses feed on inactivity. In the absence of action, your mind starts creating stories to justify your inactivity. It starts telling you why you couldn't start today, why you didn't have the energy, why things weren't perfect, why the timing wasn't right. Your brain wants to avoid discomfort, so it produces reasons, very convincing reasons, to support the decision you already made, the decision to do nothing. This is how excuses grow. They grow when you don't challenge them with action. They grow when you give them space. Have you ever noticed how the longer you wait to do something, the harder it becomes? Not because the task changed, not because the world changed, but because your excuses grew stronger. A small task becomes a mountain. A simple step becomes something impossible. And by the time you convince yourself to start, the excuse has already wrapped itself around you like chains. This is how inaction slowly destroys potential, quietly, subtly, invisibly. But here's the power you often forget. Action kills excuses instantly. The moment you take even the smallest step, the excuse loses its grip. The voice that told you you can't starts shrinking. The belief that said it's too hard begins to break. Action is the enemy of excuses. They cannot coexist. When you're moving, excuses have no room. When you're progressing, excuses have no oxygen. They suffocate. They disappear. They die. People think they need motivation to take action, but the truth is the action creates motivation. You don't wait to feel like doing it. You do it, and the feeling follows. Every time you take action, you teach your mind a new story. I can. Every time you take action, you prove the excuse wrong. And with every step, the excuse gets smaller until eventually becomes irrelevant. That's why successful people are people with fewer excuses. They're people who don't give their excuses time to grow. Think about a moment in your life when you actually got up and did something you were avoiding. At first, it felt heavy, uncomfortable, maybe even intimidating. But the moment you started doing it, the fear faded, the doubt faded, the hesitation faded. Why? Because excuses only exist in a space before action. Once action begins, the excuse loses its purpose. It has nothing left to justify. It cannot survive in the presence of effort. This is why consistency is so important. Every day you act, you weaken the pattern of excuses. You build emotional momentum. You create habits that overpower hesitation. And eventually, action becomes easier than avoiding. The discipline becomes natural. The progress becomes addictive. And excuses become the exception, not the rule. But when you do nothing, the opposite happens. Every day you delay, you reinforce the excuse. You strengthen the belief that you can't. You deepen the habit of avoidance. Your mind becomes conditioned to stay still, stay safe, comfortable. And comfort, when repeated long enough, becomes a cage. You end up stuck not because you lack ability, but because your excuses grew bigger than your will to move. To move. Excuses thrive in a still environment. When you're idle, your thoughts run wild. You start imagining scenarios, fears, failures, outcomes that haven't even happened yet. You create mental barriers far bigger than the real challenges. Inaction gives your imagination free space, and the mind, when unchallenged, will always choose the path of least resistance. It will always choose what feels safe. And excuses feel safe. They feel familiar. They feel protective. But they're not protecting you. They're preventing you. Preventing your growth, your progress, your opportunity, your greatness. Excuses are thieves. They steal your time, your potential, your dreams, your future. And the worst part is, they do it quietly. Not through force, but through persuasion. They convince you that a later is harmless, but later becomes never, and never becomes regret. The people who win in life aren't the people with more resources, more support, or more talent. They are the people who refuse to let excuses grow. They are the ones who cut excuses off at the root the moment they show up. They don't give themselves time to overthink. They don't allow hesitation to linger. They move, they act, they push. Even when they're uncomfortable, even when they're afraid, even when they're tired, they act. Because they know that action is the cure for every excuse. When you understand action destroys excuses, you stop waiting for perfect condition. You stop waiting for clarity. You stop waiting for motivation. You realize that movement creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. Your excuses only have power in your stillness. They have no power in your motion. Let me take you deeper. Every time you act, you are rewiring your brain. You are teaching it that you are the type of person who shows up, who follows through, who tries even when it's hard. This releases chemicals in your brain. Dopamine, adrenaline, confidence signals. These chemicals reinforce the belief that you can do hard things. And once your brain learns that excuses lose their influence, you become mentally stronger, emotionally tougher, and more resilient. That's why action is transformative. It doesn't just change your situation. Changes you. But excuses use the same process in reverse. Every time you avoid something, you reinforce fear. You reinforce doubt. You reinforce weakness. Your brain learns that you give in easily. That you don't push yourself, that you run from difficulty. And the more your brain learns this, the more powerful your excuses become. You're literally training yourself to be controlled by hesitation. You can't kill excuses by thinking differently. You kill them by behaving differently. You must attack them with action, attack them with movement, attack them with effort. You must refuse to give them the quiet space they need to grow. Action is loud. Action is disruptive. Action is force. And excuses cannot survive in that kind of environment. Sometimes people say, I'll act when I feel confident. But confidence doesn't come first. Confidence comes after action. It comes from evidence. It comes from proving to yourself that you can. You don't think you're way into confidence. You build it through action. That's why even a small step matters. Because a small step creates a small victory, and a small victory weakens a big excuse. Excuses grow in darkness. Keep your life in motion, and you keep the lights on. Action exposes excuses for what they really are, fears and stories with no real foundation. When you move, you discover that you are capable of far more than you believed. You discover that the task wasn't as big as you imagined. You discover that the fear wasn't as powerful as it felt. You discover that the only real barrier was your inaction. Action doesn't require perfection. You don't need the full plan to begin. You don't need to know the whole path to take the first step. You just need to move. Movement brings clarity. Movement reveals opportunities. Movement builds courage. The moment you start, everything changes. Not because the world changes, but because you change. Excuses grow when you do nothing. So stop feeding them. Stop letting them root themselves in your mind. Stop giving them the power to dictate your decisions. You have more strength than your excuses. You have more potential than your hesitation. But you will only discover that strength when you act. You will only access that potential when you move. The difference between who you are and who you want to be is action. The difference between the life you have and the life you want is action. The difference between success and regret is action. Your future is not shaped by what you think. It's shaped by what you do. Right now, at this very moment, you have a choice. You can either stay still and let your excuses grow, or you can move just one step and start killing them. You don't need to be fearless. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to act. Because the second you act, the battle shifts. The second you act, the excuses weaken. The second you act, your power returns. And once you realize that action is the key, you will never again allow excuses to control your life. You will understand that your destiny is not in the hands of your emotions, but in the hands of your actions. And when your actions become stronger than your excuses, you become unstoppable. Excuses protect your comfort zone, and goals require you to leave it. But most people never take the time to understand how deep this truth runs inside their lives. The comfort zone is not just a physical space. It's a mental environment, an emotional bubble, a psychological safe house. It's where you hide when life demands more of you. It's where you retreat when you don't want to feel pressure, challenge, vulnerability, or uncertainty. And excuses are the guards at the door. They make sure you never leave. They talk to you softly. They reassure you. They remind you of everything familiar. And they convince you that stepping out is dangerous. They make the prison feel like a home. You must understand that excuses are not random thoughts. They're strategically designed by your mind to keep you exactly where you are. Your brain is wired for survival, not success. It wants safety, not growth. It wants predictability, not greatness. Not greatness. So whenever you think about doing something new, something different, something challenging, your mind creates excuses to pull you back into the comfort zone. It tells you that you're not ready, that you don't have enough time, that other people have it easier, that tomorrow is better, that the risk is too big. And you believe it because comfort feels good. Familiarity feels safe. But safety and success rarely live in the same neighborhood. Your goals, dreams, and future live outside that comfort zone. They live on the other side of fear, effort, discipline, and discomfort. The comfort zone is a small room, and your dreams are too big to fit inside it. Every time you choose excuses, you choose to shrink your life to fit the room instead of expanding the room to fit your life. You choose smallness over growth. You choose fear over possibility. You choose stagnation over evolution. And the tragedy is that you don't even realize it. Because excuses make the comfort zone feel justified. When you decide to chase a goal, something inside you wakes up. Your potential, your hunger, your fire. But something else wakes up too, your excuses. Because goals require change and change threatens the comfort zone. So excuses rise up like an army. They come in waves. They come disguised as logic, reason, practicality, caution. They sound responsible. They sound smart. They even sound like they have your best interest in mind. But they are thieves. They steal your ambition, your drive, your energy, your momentum. And they do it quietly, gently, slowly. Not by force, but by persuasion. Think about every time you wanted to start something big, a business, a fitness journey, a new habit, a creative project, a lifestyle change. Remember how excited you were the first moment you thought about it, how powerful the vision felt, how motivated you were. And then almost immediately, the excuses started showing up. Oh, what if it doesn't work? What will people think? I don't have experience. I don't have enough money. I don't have the time. I'm not ready. And little by little, those excuses pulled you back into the comfort zone. The excitement faded. The motivation died. And the goal became something you told yourself you would try later. Later became next week. Next week became next month. And next month became never. Not because the dream changed, but because the comfort zone won the battle. The comfort zone is seductive. It gives you a false sense of security. It makes you believe you're safe when in reality, you're stuck. It makes you believe you're okay when in reality, you're shrinking. It gives you the illusion of rest. But the truth is it drains you because deep down, you know you're capable of more. And when you ignore that potential for too long, you begin to feel the weight of regret, frustration, and emptiness. People think discomfort is dangerous. People think fear is a sign they shouldn't move. But discomfort is the doorway to growth. Fear is the signal that you're stepping into your next level. Pressure is the birthplace of transformation. The comfort zone wants you to avoid all of this, but your goals demand that you walk straight into it. You cannot grow without leaving that bubble. You cannot evolve without pushing yourself. You cannot achieve anything meaningful while staying safe, hidden, protected, and unchained. Excuses work like emotional bodyguards. They keep you away from situations that challenge your identity. They protect your ego from failure. They protect your heart from vulnerability. They protect your mind from discomfort. But in protecting you, they also prevent you. They prevent you from learning new skills, meeting new opportunities, building new habits, discovering new parts of yourself. They prevent you from experiencing the fullness of your potential. Most people don't achieve greatness not because they lack talent, but because they are unwilling to feel uncomfortable. They want the reward, but they don't want the risk. They want the success, but they don't want the sacrifice. They want the dream, but they don't want the discomfort required to achieve it. They don't realize that discomfort is not the enemy. Comfort is. Comfort kills more dreams than failure ever could. You must understand this deeply. Every goal you have lies outside your comfort zone. That is the geography of growth. That is the map of success. When you set a goal, you are declaring that you want something different than what your comfort zone offers. So by definition, pursuing that goal requires leaving the comfort zone. You can't stay in the same place and expect a different life. You can't stay the same person and expect a different outcome. You can't cling to excuses and expect your world to expand. Growth and comfort cannot coexist. You cannot rise without stretching. You cannot transform without pressure. You cannot move forward without letting go of what keeps you still. And every time you choose an excuse, you choose to stay still. You choose to remain the same. You choose to live inside a boundary that your fear created. Excuses are the walls of that boundary. They are the fences that hold you in place. Some of those fences come from your past experiences. Some come from trauma. Some come from failure. Some come from people who doubted you. Some come from your own insecurities. But it doesn't matter where they come from. What matters is whether you're willing to climb over them. The moment you step out of the comfort zone, something powerful happens. Your mind starts expanding. Your confidence grows. Your creativity awakens. Your skills sharpen. Your resilience increases. You begin to trust yourself more. You learn that you're capable of handling challenges. You discover that discomfort isn't fatal. It's transformative. And once you get a taste of growth, you start craving it. You start realizing that the comfort zone was not comfort at all. It was stagnation. The people who win in life are not the people with easy paths. They are the people who train themselves to leave the comfort zone repeatedly. They get comfortable being uncomfortable. They stop negotiating with excuses. They understand that if you want big things, you must take big steps. If you want something you've never had, you must do something you've never done. If you want to rewrite your story, you must turn pages that scare you. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. The comfort zone will always call you back. Even when you start growing, it will whisper, come back where it's safe. Even when you start winning, it will say, don't go too far. Even when you start evolving, it will say, remember who you used to be. The comfort zone has a memory. It wants to pull you back into old patterns, old beliefs, old behaviors. Excuses are its tools. They will show up every time you level up. They will try to convince you that the new version of you is too risky. They will try to drag you back into average. But you must recognize them for what they are, not truth, not reality, but psychological traps. The only way to break free is to act despite the excuses, despite the fear, despite the discomfort. You must take the step before you feel ready. You must trust yourself before you see the full path. You must walk into uncertainty with courage. When you move forward, even with trembling hands or shaking legs, you weaken the comfort zone's control. Each action expands your world. Each risk expands your capacity. Each challenge expands your belief. The more you step out, the larger your comfort zone becomes. Eventually, what once terrified you becomes normal. What once intimidated you becomes easy. What once felt impossible becomes your new baseline. Growth is not a one-time event. It's a repeated decision. Every day you choose whether to stay small or expand, whether to remain the same or elevate, whether to listen to excuses or silence them. Excuses protect your comfort zone. But you were not born to live in a bubble. You were born to grow, evolve, expand, impact, and rise. Your comfort zone is not your home. It is your cage. And every dream you have is calling you to break out of it. When you finally understand that your excuses are not keeping you safe, they are keeping you stuck. You step into a new level of power. You stop settling. You stop shrinking. You stop hiding. You stop playing small. You stop living a life controlled by fear. You start choosing growth over comfort, purpose over ease, progress over excuses. And when you do that, your entire life begins to change, because the moment you leave your comfort zone is the moment you enter your destiny. When you truly decide to change your life, that decision doesn't happen on the outside first. It doesn't start with new habits, new routines, or new opportunity. It begins internally with a mental shift so deep that every part of your life eventually feels the ripple of it. Most people never experience that shift because they are waiting for the world to change before they change themselves. They want conditions to be perfect, timing to be ideal, support to be guaranteed. But life doesn't work like that. If you're serious about going to the next level, you must accept that change begins with you long before anyone else notices, celebrates, or understands what you're doing. And that's the part that scares people. The idea that the transformation must start quietly, privately, and often painfully before anything about their circumstances improves. Every time you try to grow, life will test you. Not because you're unworthy, but because growth requires resistance. You cannot pick up strength without pressure. You cannot build confidence without challenges. You cannot develop discipline without wrestling with your own excuses. And you cannot discover your potential without walking into places that once intimidated you. The moment you commit to becoming more, the universe starts checking how serious you are. Do you really want this? Are you willing to sacrifice for it? Can you be consistent even when nobody is clapping for you? Can you stay focused? Can you stay focused when distractions pile up? Can you trust the process when results are slow? These questions are not meant to break you. They are meant to shape you into someone capable of carrying the success you are asking for. The problem is that many people treat discomfort as a sign they should stop, when in reality, discomfort is the evidence that something powerful is happening. Think about it. Every meaningful transformation in nature requires discomfort. A seed must be buried in darkness before it grows. A muscle must be stretched in stress before it strengthens. Gold must face extreme heat before it becomes pure. And a person must confront their limitations, fears, and weaknesses before rising to a new version of themselves. Discomfort is not a punishment, it is preparation. It is the universe whispering, keep going. Something better is coming if you don't quit. But quitting has become normal because people crave the result without embracing the process. They want the rewards of discipline without the discipline itself. They want confidence without doing the hard things that build confidence. They want opportunity without preparing for the responsibilities those opportunities require. They want success without endurance, respect without character, growth without struggle. And that's why cycles repeat. That's why so many dreams remain unrealized. Because you can wish for improvement without ever paying the price for it. And dreams that cost nothing return nothing. There comes a moment, though, when you realize the life you desire is only available on the other side of the life you're used to. You can't hold on to your excuses and reach for your greatness at the same time. You can't cling to comfort and expect transformation. You can't keep repeating the same patterns and hope for new outcomes. At some point, you must choose. And that choice is not loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet whisper inside that says, enough. I'm done living below my potential. That moment is powerful because it marks the beginning of a new chapter. Not because things suddenly become easy, but because you are finally willing to do what most people won't. Take responsibility for your life. Responsibility is the doorway to freedom. When you stop blaming circumstances, other people, your past, or your limitation, you reclaim your power. You stop waiting. You stop wishing. You stop expecting someone else to fix what only you have the authority to fix. The truth is that nobody is coming to rescue you. Nobody is coming to force you to wake up early, to practice discipline, to stay focused, to believe in yourself. To keep going is hard. That is your job. And the sooner you embrace that responsibility, the sooner your life begins to shift. Don't underestimate the power of small decisions. People believe transformation requires grand gesture, but often it is built moment by moment. Habit by habit, choice by choice. Success is not an explosion, it's a slow burn. Every day you choose discipline over comfort, you add a brick. Every day you refuse to quit, you add a brick. Every day you tackle the tasks you've been avoiding, you add a brick. And eventually those bricks form a foundation strong enough to support the life you're building. But most people never see the foundation because it is built in silence. It is built in the early mornings, the late nights, the mundane routines, the sacrifices nobody knows about. The temptation to quit usually shows up right before the breakthrough. It feels like you're giving everything and getting nothing in return. It feels like the sacrifice outweighs the progress. It feels like your efforts are invisible, but you must understand that the seed doesn't sprout the moment it's planted. Growth happens underground first. Progress is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. So don't let the silence fool you. Don't let the waiting weaken your belief. Don't let slow movement convince you that nothing is happening. What you call delay, life calls development. You are being strengthened, prepared, refined, and educated, not punished. When you feel like giving up, remember why you started. Remember the version of you that was tired of being tired. Remember the dreams that kept you awake at night. Remember the battles you've already survived. Remember the people who believe in you. Remember the younger version of yourself who prayed to be where you are now. And remember that someone out there needs you to succeed, not because they need your help, but because they need your example. You are not climbing just for yourself. You are climbing for everyone watching who doesn't yet believe it's possible. The truth is that greatness is not meant for a chosen few. It is available to anyone willing to put in the work, stay consistent, and refuse to surrender. But most people talk themselves out of greatness because they underestimate their capability and overestimate their obstacles. They see failure as a dead end instead of a detour. They see challenges as threats instead of opportunity. They see their potential through the lens of their past instead of their future. And that mindset becomes a prison. Break free from that prison by shifting your internal dialogue. Stop telling yourself you can't and start telling yourself you can. Stop focusing on what you don't have and start using what you do have. Stop replaying your mistakes and start preparing for your comeback. Stop comparing yourself to others and start competing with your old self. Your life will always rise or fall to the level of your beliefs. So if you want to elevate your results, elevate your mindset first. Consistency is the bridge between intention and achievement. Motivation may start the journey, but discipline finishes it. And discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up regardless of how you feel. There will be days when you're tired, discouraged, stressed, or uninspired. Show up anyway. There will be days when progress is slow, when results are hidden, when doubts whisper in your ear. Show up anyway. There will be days when the goal feels far and the pain feels close. Show up anyway, because success belongs to those who keep moving even when movement feels small. Eventually, your persistence becomes power. Your consistency becomes confidence. Your discipline becomes identity. And your hard work becomes success. You wake up one day and realize you are no longer the person you were. You have grown stronger, wiser, more resilient, more focused. And that transformation didn't come from luck, shortcuts, or miracles. It came from daily commitment and relentless effort. It came from refusing to quit, even when quitting felt easier. It came from choosing purpose over comfort again and again. And when the breakthrough finally comes, and you will understand why the struggle was necessary. You will see how every setback shaped you, every obstacle trained you, every rejection redirected you, every delay developed you. You will realize that the process didn't just prepare you for the blessing. It prepared you to sustain the blessing, because success without character collapses. But success built on discipline, consistency, and inner strength endures. So today, make a decision. Not a loud one, not a dramatic one, but a real one. Decide that you will no longer shrink yourself. Decide that you will no longer run from challenges. Decide that you will no longer negotiate with your potential. Decide that you will show up even when conditions aren't perfect. Decide that you will rise, even if you must rise slowly. Decide that you will keep going no matter how long it takes. Decide that you are worthy of the life you dream of, and then prove it through your actions, because at the end of the day, the future belongs to the persistent. The rewards belong to the discipline. The victory belongs to the relentless. And the next chapter of your life is waiting for the version of you who refuses to give up. There comes a point in life when you must confront the reality that nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is coming to hand you the life you dream about. And nobody is responsible for your future except you. This realization can feel harsh at first, almost heavy, but it's also one of the most liberating truths you will ever embrace. Because once you understand that your life is in your hand, you finally stop waiting, and start creating. You stop depending on chances and start building strategies. You stop hoping things will change and start making things change. And that shift, even though it begins quietly inside, becomes the spark that sets your entire future on fire. People underestimate the power of taking ownership. They think responsibility means blaming themselves for everything that went wrong. But responsibility is not about guilt. It's about control. The moment you take responsibility is the exact moment you take the steering wheel of your life. You decide the direction, the speed, the purpose. You decide what you tolerate, what you chase, what you sacrifice, and what you refuse to accept any longer. Responsibility doesn't limit you. It frees you from excuses, from waiting, from wishing, from being stuck. But stepping into that responsibility requires courage. It requires honesty. You have to look in the mirror and admit that some of the places you are stuck in are not because life is unfair, but because you have been avoiding the actions and decisions that will move you forward. It's easier to blame the system, the circumstances, the people who doubted you, the moments that hurt you. But easier has never built greatness. And the truth is that the more you cling to excuses, the more you chain yourself to the life you say you want to escape from. Growth demands honesty. You must be willing to tell yourself the truth even when it hurts. If you lack discipline, admit it. If you've been procrastinating, admit it. If you've been settling, admit it. If you're capable of more but operating at half your potential, admit it. Not because you need to feel guilty, but because you need to stop lying to yourself. You cannot fix what you refuse to face. You cannot change what you pretend is fine. And you cannot progress while protecting the habits that are holding you back. Once you tell yourself the truth, the next step is choosing who you want to become. Too many people are defined by who they used to be, by their past failures, their past trauma, their old habits, their old environment. But identity is not a fixed label. It is a decision. You get to choose your identity every day based on your action, your standards, and your commitment. If you want to be someone disciplined, then show up consistently. If you want to be someone strong, then practice emotional endurance. If you want to be someone successful, then adopt the habits that success requires. Identity is built, not born. The problem is that people try to change their results without changing their identity. They want new achievements, but keep the same mindset, the same routines, the same excuses, the same emotional reaction. You can't upgrade your life if you refuse to upgrade your patterns. You can't create a new future with an outdated version of yourself. Every new level of life requires a new level of you, sharper, wiser, more disciplined, more intentional, and you can't step into that new version by accident. It takes conscious effort. The journey of transformation is not smooth. Some days will feel heavy, some days will feel lonely. Some days will feel like you are giving more than you are receiving. But those are the exact days when character is built. Anyone can be motivated when things are going well. Anyone can be committed when results are visible. But true strength shows up in silence, in the days when you are tired but still working, frustrated but still pushing, discouraged but still believing. Those silent battles, the ones nobody sees, are where greatness is born. People often think emotional strength means never feeling overwhelmed, never doubting yourself, never breaking down. But emotional strength is not about avoiding struggle. It's about learning how to carry it without letting it crush your spirit. It's about knowing when to push and when to pause, when to fight and when to heal, when to persist and when to reassess. Emotional strength is the ability to stay committed even when your feelings try to pull you backward. Your emotions will fluctuate, but your purpose must remain stable. One of the biggest lies people tell themselves is that they need to feel ready before they start. They wait for confidence, for clarity, for motivation, but readiness is a myth. Confidence comes after repetition. Clarity comes after movement. Motivation comes after progress. If you wait to feel ready, life will pass you by. The greatest achievements in history were made by people who stepped forward, despite fear, despite uncertainty, despite discomfort. They didn't have all the answers. They simply had the courage to begin. Every meaningful journey begins before you feel prepared. The first step is always shaky. The first attempt is always imperfect. But you cannot master what you never begin. And the moment you start, something incredible happens. Your brain begins to adapt. Your confidence grows. Your skills sharpen. Your belief evolves. Action creates momentum, and momentum creates transformation. Your job is to take the first step. The process will take care of the rest. Another critical part of growth is learning to manage your environment. You cannot rise while surrounded by people who expect you to stay the same. You cannot reach new heights while spending your time with individuals who drain your energy, undermine your goals, or refuse to grow. You must protect your space like your future depends on it. Because it does. Surround yourself with people who challenge you, not people who limit you. People who inspire you, not people who discourage you. People who want to grow, not people who are comfortable staying stuck. You must also become your own source of motivation. External sources can spark your fire, but internal commitment keeps it burning. You can't rely on applause, validation, or recognition to keep going. Some seasons of growth are quiet. Nobody will congratulate you for waking up early, for choosing discipline, for saying no to distractions, for doing the inner work. But those choices matter. They compound. They build the unseen foundation of your future. And the most profound growth comes when you realize that the world doesn't owe you anything. You don't deserve success just because you want it. You don't earn respect just because you ask for it. You don't build a legacy just because you dream of one. You get what you work for, what you sacrifice for, what you are consistent enough to maintain. The world rewards action, not intention. Commitment, not wish, discipline, not excuses. There will be moments when you question if your effort is worth it. When progress feels slow, when challenges pile up, when you feel overlooked, undervalued, unseen. But progress often disguises itself as struggle. The process tests you before it transforms you. And the people who succeed are not the ones who had the easiest path. They are the ones who kept going when others quit. Your breakthrough is never far. It's often just on the other side of your endurance. Think about every time you almost gave up and then something shifted. Think about the moments when you thought you had nothing left, and somehow you kept moving. Think about the times when life pushed you to your limits and you realized your limits were higher than you thought. You are stronger than your doubt. You are bigger than your fear. You are more capable than your past suggests. But you will never see your true strength if you keep stopping when things get hard. Every version of you that failed, struggled, cried, or fell apart played a role in shaping the person you are becoming. You are not weak because you struggle. You are stronger because you survive. The point is not to avoid failure. The point is to learn how to rise faster, wiser, and more focused. Resilience is not built in comfort. It is built in challenge. And every challenge you overcome becomes a building block and the foundation of your future. You must learn to give yourself grace while still holding yourself accountable. Grace means recognizing you are human. Accountability means refusing to settle. And together they create balance. Without grace, you burn out. Without accountability, you stagnate. But when combined, they create unstoppable growth. You forgive yourself for mistakes, but you don't repeat them. You acknowledge your struggles, but you don't let them define you. You rest when needed, but you never quit. The life you want requires a version of you that you have not yet met. You must grow into that person through discipline, through self-awareness, through consistency, through courage. You can't shortcut the journey, and you can't skip the struggle. But you can choose to face it with strength instead of fear. You can choose to walk toward your future instead of running from your past. You can choose to bet on yourself every single day. One day, you will look back and realize that every sacrifice, every tear, every long night, every moment of doubt, every ounce of effort is worth it. You will see how far you've come and wonder why you ever doubted yourself. You will understand that the process didn't just give you success. It made you someone capable of sustaining, protecting, and growing that success. Your future is waiting. Your breakthrough is waiting. But they will not walk toward you. You must walk toward them with conviction, with discipline, with courage, and with unwavering belief that you are created for more. And once you start walking, refuse to stop, refuse to shrink, refuse to settle, because the life you dream of is not a fantasy, it's a possibility. And the only thing standing between you and that possibility is the version of you that doubts, hesitates, and delays. Choose the version that acts. Choose the version that commits. Choose the version that pushes. Choose the version that believes. That version of you will build the life you've been chasing. There comes a moment when you realize that the world around you has shaped you far more than you ever noticed. The neighborhood you grew up in, the people you surrounded yourself with, the voices you heard daily, the limitations you were taught to accept. Those things sink into your identity before you even know who you are. You inherit beliefs, habits, fear, doubts, and excuses from the environment that raised you. Some of it you pick up without even trying. Some of it is passed into your life the same way a family recipe is passed down. Without question, without challenge, simply accepted as true. And for many people, that inherited mindset becomes the thing that quietly holds them back for years. But here's the truth. What you inherited may not be your fault. What you do with your life is still your responsibility. You cannot change where you came from, but you can absolutely change where you're going. You may not have chosen the environment that shaped you, but you can choose the discipline that will reshape you. Discipline is not inherited. It is built. It is earned. It is earned. It is forged by choice, repetition, sacrifice, and commitment. Some people go their entire lives blaming their upbringing, their family, their past, their circumstances for why they can't grow. They convince themselves that because they weren't handed the right tools, they can't build anything meaningful. But discipline is the great equalizer. Discipline is available to anyone who decides to reach for it. Discipline doesn't care about your background, your income, your education, your fear, or your excuses. Discipline only responds to effort. Discipline only answers to consistency. Discipline only follows those who choose to show up every single day, whether they feel like it or not. Many of the voices you grew up around may have taught you to settle, to be cautious, to think small, to accept survival instead of chasing success. They might have taught you fear disguised as wisdom, doubt disguised as protection, limitation disguised as realism. But you must understand that those voices were speaking from their own experience. They weren't speaking your destiny. They weren't speaking your future. They were speaking from their wounds, their struggles, their failures, their disappointments, their beliefs. That was their story, not yours. And if you're not careful, you will inherit their limitations as your identity. You will start living inside boundaries that were never meant for you. You will start repeating patterns that were passed to you instead of choosing the ones that actually lead to growth. At some point, you must be brave enough to say, this may be what I came from, but it is not who I'm going to be. You must look at your life and separate what was given to you from what you want to build. Discipline gives you that power. Discipline lets you rewrite your story. Discipline lets you rise above the environment that shaped you. Discipline is the tool that takes you from where you started to where you were meant to be. But discipline isn't glamorous in the beginning. It isn't exciting. It isn't loud. Discipline is quiet, repetitive, often boring. It's waking up earlier than you want to. It's saying no to things that look fun, but steal your future. It's doing the hard work when nobody is watching. It's keeping commitments long after the mood you made them in has faded away. Discipline is building your future brick by brick while others sleep, complain, or wait for motivation to hit them like lightning. Discipline is a decision to outgrow the excuses you inherit. You must be willing to build discipline even if nobody around you understands it. People might call you different. They might call you strict. They might call you obsessed. But remember this, the people who call you too focused are the same people who will one day ask how you did it. The people who make fun of your discipline will one day admire your results. The people who laughed at your consistency will one day call it luck. They won't see the lonely mornings, the long nights, the sacrifices, the discipline. They will only see the outcome. And that's okay. You don't need applause to build discipline. You don't need validation to grow. You just need to decide that you want something bigger for your life than the limitations you inherited. And the truth is, you don't break generational cycles with wishes. You break them with discipline. You don't heal old patterns with hope. You heal them with commitment. You don't change your identity with dreams. You change it with daily actions. Every time you choose discipline over excuses, you take one step away from who you were taught to be and one step closer to who you were born to be. Some of you grew up around people who settled, people who stopped trying, people who gave up on their dreams because they never saw anyone succeed. That environment taught you comfort, not ambition. It taught you survival, not growth. But you can't build an extraordinary future with a survival mindset. Survival is about doing the minimum. Success is about doing what's required. Discipline is the bridge between the two. It takes you from simply getting by to finally getting ahead. And I know it's not easy to break habits you grew up around. It's not easy to unlearn what you were taught for years. It's not easy to step outside the identity people expect you to live inside. Some people won't support your growth. Some won't understand your discipline. Some will underestimate you because they only know the old version of you. But none of that matters. You are not responsible for their perception. You are responsible for your transformation. Every time you choose discipline, you strengthen the version of you that refuses to settle. Every time you choose discipline, you weaken the version of you that inherited doubt, procrastination, and fear. Every time you choose discipline, you become someone your past could never predict. Discipline is the tool that separates you from the patterns that shaped you. And eventually, it becomes the foundation you stand on. The beautiful thing about discipline is that it compounds. One day of it might not change your life, but 100 days will. 1 year will. 5 years will. Discipline becomes identity. What used to feel like a struggle becomes your new normal. What used to be hard becomes instinct. What used to be optional becomes non-negotiable. You reach a point where discipline is no longer something you try to do. It's simply who you are. And that moment, that shift, is when you truly break free from the limitations you inherited. That's when you stop being a product of your environment and start being a product of your decision. That's when you stop repeating history and start rewriting it. That's when you stop surviving and start thriving. Discipline is the doorway to that kind of freedom. Your life moving forward will not be determined by the excuses you inherited. It will be determined by the discipline you choose. You can't control what you were given, but you can control what you build. You can't control who doubted you, but you can control who you become. You can't control the past, but you can control the habits that shape your future. Everything you want is on the other side of the discipline you've been avoiding. So decide today that you will no longer let your environment dictate your potential. Decide that you will no longer live under patterns that were handed to without your permission. Decide that you will no longer allow excuses to define your identity. Decide that no matter where you started, you will finish stronger. Decide that you will choose discipline, not because it's easy, not because it's fun, not because it's convenient, but because your future deserves it. You were not created to repeat the struggles you came from. You were created to rise above them. You were created to break what broke the people before you. You were created to carry strength, not excuses. And everything you dream of becomes possible the moment you choose discipline over the limitations you inherited. There comes a point in your life when you realize that the only thing standing between you and the future you want is the version of you that refuses to grow. Not your past, not your circumstances, not your family, not your finances, not your mistakes. The only real obstacle is the part of you that still clings to comfort, still entertains excuses, still negotiates with discipline, still believes survival is enough, still doubts your own potential. And the truth is, every time you step toward a bigger version of yourself, the smaller version fights back. It resists, it argues, it panics, because growth feels like death to the version of you that wasn't built for greatness. The small self, your insecurities, your fears, your bad habits, your self-doubt knows that if you grow, it dies. And that is why growth feels so uncomfortable. You're not just building something new, you're burying something old. You're not just rising, you're shedding. And anything worth shedding will cling to you before it lets go. Some people never become the person they were meant to be because they spend their whole lives protecting the person they used to be. They defend their comfort zone like sacred ground. They protect their excuses like priceless possessions. They cling to old identities because it feels safer than stepping into unknown potential. But you cannot accept greatness while holding on to the identity built by fear. You cannot step into your future while dragging the weight of your past. You cannot carry the energy required for success while still feeding the mentality that was born in struggle. There is a version of you that must die so the next version can live. You must understand that transformation will always ask for sacrifice. And the first sacrifice is identity. You have to be willing to let go of the story you've told yourself for years. The story that says, oh, this is just who I am. The story that says, I've always struggled, so I always will. The story that said, my circumstances define me. The story that says, people like me don't succeed. These stories aren't true, they're prisons. And as long as you live inside those narratives, your potential will suffocate. Most people don't fail because of lack of talent or lack of opportunity. They fail because of the story they repeat to themselves every day. Your story becomes your ceiling. Your story becomes your cage. Your story becomes your limitation. But the moment you rewrite the story, you raise the standard. And raising the standard is the birthplace of transformation. You do not rise by trying harder. You rise by becoming someone who no longer accepts the level you used to tolerate. Growth begins the moment you say, I'm done living like this. I'm done settling. I'm done shrinking. I'm done repeating cycles. I'm done being a prisoner of who I used to be. But the moment you decide to grow, life will test that decision. Your old habits will tempt you. Your old fears will whisper. Your old patterns will resurface. That small version of you will plead and negotiate and beg to stay. It will say, just one more time, or just take a break. You've already done enough. You deserve to relax. You can start tomorrow. And if you listen, even for a moment, you reinforce the old self. You feed the version that is slowly killing your future. Growth requires starving an old identity. It requires doing the opposite of what your comfort zone wants. It requires choosing discipline when laziness calls, choosing belief when doubt screams, choosing effort when ease tempts, choosing purpose when distraction surrounds you. People talk about wanting to upgrade their lives, but they rarely talk about upgrading their identity. They think new habits alone will change them. But habits without identity last only a moment. Identity is the root, habits are the fruit. If the root stays the same, the fruit will eventually return to what it used to be. That's why people start strong and fade away. They try to behave differently without becoming different. They try to build a new life using the mindset of their old self. But you can't build a palace with the tools meant for survival. You can't build greatness with the identity that was created to endure struggle. You must rebuild the root. You must reconstruct the identity. An identity rebuilds itself through choices, consistent, repeated, disciplined choices. Every time you say a no to an excuse, you kill a piece of the old self. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen the new one. Every time you push through discomfort, you create space for the higher version of you to breathe. Every time you show up when you don't feel like it, you teach your mind that your feelings are not your master. Discipline is the sculptor and you are the clay. And with every act of commitment, discipline chisels away the parts of you that don't belong to your future. It's not supposed to be easy. If growth were easy, everyone would change. Everyone would be powerful. Everyone would be extraordinary. But most people remain the same year after year because change requires letting go of who they've been for too long. The old self becomes familiar. It becomes comfortable. Even when it hurts you, it's still familiar. And humans cling to familiarity, even at the cost of their own progress. That's why people return to old relationships that drained them, old habits that destroyed them, old mindsets that limited them, because familiarity feels safer than transformation. But comfort is the enemy of expansion. Familiarity is the enemy of destiny. You cannot grow while staying loyal to your former limitations. You must reach the moment where staying comfortable feels like suffocating. That's when you awaken. That's when you rise. That's when you rise. Not because life gets easier, but because you finally understand that staying the same is no longer an option. You see the cost. You see the waste. You see the years slip through your finger, and something inside you screams, I want better. I deserve better. I'm capable of more. That scream is the voice of the new identity fighting to emerge. When that voice appears, you must protect it. You must feed it. You must trust it. Because that voice is not lying. It is revealing what has been buried under years of fear and self-doubt. That voice is your potential calling you home. But potential without discipline dies in silence. You must combine that inner voice with daily action. No matter how small, no matter how slow, no matter how heavy, daily action is the lifeline of identity transformation. The more actions you take aligned with your future self, the weaker your past self becomes. People think they need massive leaps to change their lives. But transformation is built through small shifts repeated without negotiation. Waking up earlier, reading instead of scrolling, working instead of wishing, practicing instead of procrastinating, showing gratitude instead of complaining, operating with integrity instead of excuses. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You need to shift the direction by a few degrees and stay consistent. A 2-degree shift over 5 years takes you to a completely different destination. Growth is the slow burn, not the sudden spark. There's a new version of you waiting to be built. Stronger, more disciplined, more confident, more resilient, more focused, more capable, more powerful. But that version cannot emerge until you stop feeding the version that holds you back. You cannot keep giving energy to fear and expect confidence to grow. You cannot keep giving energy to procrastination and expect progress to appear. You cannot keep giving energy to doubt and expect faith to strengthen. Where your energy goes, your identity grows. And eventually, after enough discipline, enough choices, enough repetition, something incredible happens. The new version becomes natural. The old self feels foreign. The excuses that once controlled you lose their grip. The distractions that once tempted you look meaningless. The habits that once drained you no longer align with who you are becoming. You outgrow your old self the way a snake outgrows its skin. Not through force, but through evolution. You weren't meant to stay the same forever. Growth is your nature. Expansion is your nature. Becoming more is your nature. Becoming more is your nature. You must protect your transformation with everything you have. Not everyone will applaud it. Some people will fear the new you, because it reminds them of the growth they're avoiding. Some will criticize you because your discipline exposes their excuses. Some will distance themselves because your mindset no longer fits their comfort zone. But that is the price of rising. Not everyone can go with you, and that's okay. Your future requires a new environment, new thoughts, new habits, new standards, and sometimes new people. Letting go is part of leveling up. And when you finally break through, when the new identity becomes your home, you will look back at the old version of yourself with gratitude, not shame. Because that version survived long enough for you to grow beyond it. That version did the best it could with the mindset it had. But now you're different. Now you're stronger. Now you're disciplined. Now you're aligned. Now you're unstoppable. And the world will feel the weight of your transformation. Every single one of us walks around with a picture of who we could be. A vision deep inside that keeps whispering, there's more in you. But the distance between the life you have and the life you want isn't measured in miles, money, talent, or connections. It's measured in the strength of your commitment. And commitment is not what you say. It's what you do when everything inside you wants to quit. It's what you do when the world stops applauding, when the people around you stop believing, and when the results stop showing. See, most people want success at the level of excitement, but they don't want it at the level of responsibility. They love the idea of winning, but they don't love the way to winning. They love the dream, but they don't want the discipline. They love the destination, but they fear the discomfort that comes with the journey. And that's why a commitment isn't a word, it's a lifestyle. It's a contract you sign with yourself that has no expiration date, no loopholes, no excuses, and no refund. Means you keep going when the feeling is long gone, because the promise you made to yourself matters more than the pain in front of you. You have to understand something. Emotional energy will fade. Motivation will fade, hype will fade, even the people cheering for you will fade. But commitment cannot fade. Commitment must become the engine that keeps running long after the fuel of excitement runs dry. Because the truth is, excitement gets you started, but commitment keeps you in the game. Excitement makes you write the goal down, but commitment makes you live the goal out. Excitement makes you talk about what you want. Commitment makes you sacrifice for what you want. Excitement makes you post about your vision. Commitment makes you show up for your vision when nobody is watching. And you need to ask yourself honestly, are you committed to the vision, or are you committed only to the feeling that comes with the vision? Because the feeling won't produce the result. The grind will. The discipline will. The follow-through will. Commitment means you're willing to do the things you don't feel like doing at the times you don't feel like doing them. For a future you haven't seen yet, but believe in with everything you got. It means you don't negotiate with laziness. You don't negotiate with fear. You don't negotiate with doubt. You don't negotiate with weakness. Because the moment you start negotiating with your excuses, you've already lost. Excuses are like oxygen for failure. They keep it alive. But commitment suffocates excuses. Commitment turns I don't feel like it into I said I would. It turns I'm tired into I'm built for this. It turns I'm scared into I'm willing. It turns I can to I must. When you reach that level of commitment, you stop being controlled by your emotions and start being driven by your purpose. And nothing, absolutely nothing in this world is more powerful than a person whose purpose becomes bigger than their pain. See, a committed person looks at obstacles differently than everyone else. Where other people see walls, the committed see doors waiting to be kicked open. Where others see problems, the committed see possibilities. Where others see reasons to quit, the committed see reasons to push harder. And that's why committed people always win, not because they're better, smarter, or luckier, but because they refuse to stop. Commitment makes average people extraordinary. It makes ordinary people unstoppable. It takes a person with no background, no support, no money, no connections, and gives them something far more powerful. Consistency, over time, destroys talent. Consistency destroys luck. Consistency destroys excusing. Consistency builds mastery, credibility, momentum, and confidence. When you stay committed long enough, even the universe has to get out of your way. But commitment doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean you won't fall, fail, stumble, or make bad decisions. It simply means you refuse to stay down. A committed person gets knocked down 7 times and stands up 8. They fall back 10 steps, but take 11 steps forward. They get criticized, doubted, misunderstood, judged, underestimated. They keep going because the journey is not about how others see them. It's about who they promised themselves they would become. You've got to reach a point where you say, I made a vow to my future, and I'm not breaking it for anything. Not fee, not fatigue, not people, not circumstances, not setbacks. That's commitment. That's the level where growth happens. That's the level where transformation starts. You also have to understand that commitment requires sacrifice. You can't stay committed and stay comfortable at the same time. Something has to go. Your excuses, your laziness, your bad habits, your distractions, your old pattern, your negative thinking, your comfort zone. Growth demands that you leave behind the version of yourself that settles for less. You can't reach new heights dragging old behavior. Commitment often means you lose friends, lose comfort, lose approval, lose sleep, but you gain purpose, power, strength, confidence, and self-respect. The price is real, but so is the reward. And the reward is not just the achievement. It's the person you become on the journey. Commitment builds character. Character builds identity. Identity builds destiny. The world can take things from you, money, opportunities, people, but it can't take away who you become. And it's the direct result of what you stay committed to. And let's be real. Commitment will get tested. Not once, not twice, but over and over again. Life will throw challenges at you just to see if you mean what you said. Your dreams will test you. Your goals will test you. Your circumstances will test you. Safe would ask you, life, how are you still committed when you're tired? When it's hard, when it's low, when it's lonely, when it's boring? And if your answer is yes, over and over again, life will eventually reward you. But most people quit right before the breakthrough. They quit when it gets tough. They quit when they don't see results fast enough. They quit when the reward doesn't match the effort. But what they don't realize is that the breakthrough isn't at the beginning, and it's not even in the middle. It's right at the edge of frustration. It's right where you want to stop. It's right where you feel like giving up. That's where commitment matters the most. That's where the magic happens. Commitment also means you stop entertaining plan B. Most people fail because they give themselves too many escape doors. They say they're committed, but in the back of their mind, they've already prepared a backup plan for quitting. And as long as you have a backup plan, you'll never give 100% to your primary plan. You'll always hold back. You'll always run to comfort when the grind gets intense. You'll always have an excuse ready. But when you rip up plan B, when you burn the boats, when you tell yourself that this is it, no way out, no turning back, that's when your true power activates. Humans reach extraordinary levels of greatness, not when everything is easy, but when there's no choice but to rise. You gotta become the kind of person who said, I am committed to the best version of me, not the version that complains, not the version that procrastinates, not the version that quits every time results slow down. You need to commit to the version of yourself who gets up early, who stays late, who pushes when it hurts, who studies when others sleep, who works when others rest, who stays focused when others drift. You've got to commit to the version of yourself that breaks cycles, elevates standards, refuses excuses, and demands excellence. Your life would always follow the level of your commitment. If you commit halfway, you get halfway results. If you commit lazily, you get lazy results. But if you commit fully, mentally, emotionally, physically, daily, you open doors you didn't even know existed. And the most important commitment you will ever make is the commitment to never betray yourself again. Because every time you make a promise to yourself and break it, you lose trust in yourself. And when you don't trust yourself, you stop believing in yourself. And when you don't believe in yourself, the world won't either. But when you become the kind of person who follows through on what you said, every time, you build internal power. You build self-respect. You build confidence. You build momentum. You become dangerous, not because you're the strongest, but because you are consistent. And consistent people are unstoppable. So today, decide, not with your mouth, not with your emotions, but with your actions. Decide that you will no longer be the person who quits when it's inconvenient. Decide you will no longer break promises to yourself. Decide that commitment is not optional anymore. It's who you are now. And when you make that decision, truly, deeply, permanently, your excuses will die, your fears will shrink, your doubts will weaken, and your life will rise. Because commitment doesn't just change what you do, it changes who you become. In the end, everything you've heard, everything you felt, Everything that stirs something inside you comes down to one simple truth. Your life will not change because you want it to change. It will change because you decide fully, completely, relentlessly to kill every excuse that has ever held you back and replace it with action, responsibility, and commitment. You can listen to 1,000 speeches, write down 1,000 goals, repeat 1,000 affirmations, but none of it will matter if you don't stand up right now and declare that the version of you who settles, who hesitates, who doubts, who hides behind reasons and explanations, who says a borrow and a later and a maybe, that version no longer has permission to run your life. At some point, you have to choose who you are going to become. And you have to choose it with a level of seriousness that leaves no room for retreat. You have to decide that excuses are not part of your identity anymore. Because excuses will always show up. They will always whisper, always tempt, always convince you that you're justified in taking the easy route. They'll remind you of your past. They'll remind you of your failures. They'll remind you of your fear. They'll remind you that nobody in your family did, that you don't have the right background, that life is unfair, that you're not ready, that you don't know enough, that you haven't healed enough, that the conditions aren't perfect. And if you keep listening, if you keep giving them room, if you keep letting them guide your decisions, they will build your entire life for you. They will design your destiny. They will shape your future. But that future will always be small because excuses never take you upward. They always pull you downward. Excuses don't build dreams. They bury them. You have reached a moment in your life where you can no longer afford to let excuses be the architects of your future. You have too much potential, too much purpose, too many gifts inside you to keep living at a fraction of your capacity. You have survived things that would have broken other people. You have walked through storms and you're still standing. You've pushed through pain, disappointment, setback after setback, and you're still here. You didn't come this far to let excuses win. You didn't fight through everything you fought through just to hand your life over to fear. And you certainly didn't survive your struggles just to let your old habits sabotage your new future. There's a stronger you, a wiser you, a more disciplined, more focused, more committed version of you waiting to come alive. And the only barrier between who you are now and who you could be is the story you keep telling yourself about why you can't. But here's the truth. You can. You have everything you need to become the person you were created to be. You have resilience, you have intelligence, you have imagination, you have heart, you have the capacity to learn, adapt, and push beyond limits you once thought were permanent. You're not broken, you're becoming. You're not failing, you're forging. You're not weak, you're warming up. Every challenge that tried to stop you became a lesson. Every mistake became a tool. Every disappointment became a training ground. Every closed door became the doorway to a new direction. You're not behind, you're being prepared. But preparation only matters if you act on it. Knowledge means nothing without execution. Potential means nothing without consistency. Dreams mean nothing without discipline. You have to step into alignment with the future you want. And that means no more bargaining with your excuses. No more relying on motivation. No more waiting for the perfect moment. No more hoping that someone else comes and pulls you into greatness. You must pull yourself. You must push yourself. You must lead yourself. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. Yes, it will be difficult. Yes, it will stretch you. But discomfort is the birthplace of growth and struggle is the birthplace of strength. You don't grow when it's easy. You grow when you are forced to rise. The truth is, you are more capable than you allow yourself to believe. You have survived your worst days. You have conquered hardships you never thought you'd make it through. You've kept going at times when quitting would have been easier. You've shown resilience. You've shown courage. You've shown spirit. And now it's time to turn that strength inward. It's time to demand more of yourself. Not out of guilt, not out of pressure, but out of respect for your potential. Because if you don't demand greatness from yourself, nobody else will. Nobody else will, and even if they did, it wouldn't matter. The greatest force in your life is not who believes in you. It's who you decide to be when nobody else is watching. Every day from this moment forward must be built on a clear decision. You will show up for your life, not halfway, not when you feel like it, not just when it's convenient, You will show up with purpose, with urgency, with commitment. You will honor the dreams inside you. You will fight for the life you want. You will stay consistent even when the results are slow. You will keep going even when the progress is invisible. You will push forward even when fear tries to convince you that you're not enough. And each day you do that. Each day you make that choice. Each day you silence your excuses and act anyway. You will begin to see a new version of yourself emerging, stronger, clearer, more focused, more disciplined, more relentless. This is your moment to take ownership. Not of the things you can't control, but of the things you can. Your mindset, your habits, your discipline, your effort, your decisions, your attitude, your consistency. That is where your power lies. That is where transformation happens. That is where excuses have no oxygen to survive. And when you take ownership of those things consistently, day after day, something incredible happens. Momentum. Momentum is the force that makes the impossible possible. Momentum makes doors open that were once locked. Momentum builds confidence you've never felt before. Momentum turns small wins into giant leaps. And once you create momentum in your life, excuses lose their grip forever. So as you walk away from this message, from this moment, from this turning point, you must ask yourself one final question. What story will I tell about my life? Will it be a story of reasons or a story of result? A story of result. A story of almost or a story of achievement. A story of excuses or a story of excellence. A story of hesitation or a story of transformation. You get to write that story. You get to choose the direction. You get to decide whether your excuses become the chains that hold you down or the fuel that pushes you forward. No one can choose that for you. No one can do the work for you. No one can walk your path except you. And the moment you choose to kill every excuse, the moment you choose to take full responsibility, the moment you choose to commit with everything inside you, life will begin to shift. Opportunities will appear. Strength will grow. Confidence will rise. Purpose will sharpen. And you will step into a version of yourself that you always known existed but never fully met. That version of you, the committed, disciplined, determined version is waiting. And it's time. Time to step into your greatness. Time to close the chapter on excuses. Time to rise, to grow, to push, to execute, to live with purpose, to live with passion, to live with power. Your future is calling. Answer it. And don't bring a single excuse with you.